Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will give an introduction to those who have never used Power Basic before or even considered taking up programming. Today we will look at the addition and subtraction arithmetic operators in Power Basic. Today we're going to be looking at the arithmetic operators for addition and subtraction. This follows on from the video on arithmetic operators for multiplication and division. As we did in the previous video, we can calculate the result of the addition of two values by sending the values out to our console. Here we are adding the value 5 to the value 4.5, giving us an answer of 9.5. We're going to be treating these values as currency values. So we're going to be using a variable type called currency x. This is the extended currency variable type. This is exclusively used for monetary values and will give us two decimal places and avoid the problems with rounding errors. So we have defined three variables, a, b and c, each of which is an extended currency variable. We're setting the value of a to 5, the value of b to 4.5, and we're then performing the calculation to add both of them together and to store the result in the c variable. And then we're printing out that value to our screen. And again, it gives us the answer 9.5. As I said in the previous video, it's always ideal when you're creating local variables to give them sensible names. While the application will work perfectly well with single character variables, it does make it difficult to work out what the variables are actually for. So having a naming convention for your variables is always a good idea. Here we have set our variable name to be prefixed with the letters CUR for currency, and then the name describing what the variable is actually for. In this case, our first variable is an account balance. Our second variable is an amount of a deposit, and the third variable is the new account balance. We can then set these values quite easily in our code. So we're setting the value of the account balance to be 5 and the value of the deposit to be 4.5. We can determine the value of the new account balance by adding the deposit to the existing account balance and storing the value in our new account balance. We can now print this out to our console. So we're printing out the text new account balance, an equal sign, and whatever the currency is we're dealing in this case pounds. And following after that is the value of the new account balance. So we'll see the new account balance is appearing as 9.5. As this is a currency value we're dealing with, we'd like to print this out with two values after the decimal point, so it should appear as 9.50. So how can we do that in the code? In this case, we can use the format $ command. The format $ command is very useful for manipulating and displaying your currency values. Within the brackets, we have the, first of all, name of the variable we wish to actually manipulate, followed by a comma, and then a mask. This particular mask is set to show two values explicitly after the decimal point, as in 00. So any zero value in those places will be displayed on screen. It also has a 0 to the left of the decimal point, which means if we have a monetary value which is less than a whole number, as in 0.5, it will always display the leading 0. The hashes and the comma before that are an indication that should the value appear greater than 1000, then we want a comma after the first digit. So we run that now to see what we get. So it's displaying our original balance as 5.00. If we do this for the rest of the variables we want to display, we can enter them exactly the same way using the format command and the same mask. I'm using the underline character at the end of each line to fold the code down to the following line so you can see all the code on the screen at the one time. This is merely a convenience for the programmer. If we run the code now, we will see we get the values quite nicely shown as 5 as the original balance, 4.5 as the customer's deposit, and the eventual new account balance is 9.50. To test out the use of our mask, we can actually increase the size of the account balance. And we'll increase the size of the deposit as well. If we run that now, we'll see it has correctly put a comma in after the 1,000. However, there is more we can do to actually prettify what appears on the screen. What I'd like to do now is to right justify each of these values so that they all line up on the screen. PowerBasic supplies you with another string handling command called rset. If we put rset$ at the beginning of our format, followed by a bracket, and at the end of the string, we can specify how many characters we wish to pad out. So we're going to go for 10 characters, which should be enough for the values we're handling at the moment. So with this in place, it should take all the detail and move it to the right based on a 10 character length. If we run the code now, we will see that all the values line up quite nicely now. So this certainly prettifies what appears on the screen. So how else can we handle additions? Let's assume we also want to keep track of the number of times this particular customer has visited the bank. We can set up a local variable as a long, which is a whole number. And we can set the value of our variable visits to bank equal to 5, being the number of times this customer has visited the bank. And each time the customer visits the bank, we want to increase that number by 1. So we can quite easily set that syntax by making the variable equal to the variable plus 1, and then printing that value out to our console. And this will show us the visit count has now been incremented to the value of 6. But there are two other ways of doing this kind of transaction. We can use this syntax. We can make the variable followed by a plus sign, then an equals and the value 1. This is doing exactly the same as the previous calculation. We're taking the value that's in visits to bank and we are adding to that variable the value of 1. So it should increase by 1 again. So we run that now, we'll see that the visit count has now gone up to 7. It's entirely down to personal preference whether you use the first method or the second. The advantage of the second is it saves you a little bit of typing. But there is another method of actually incrementing a value by 1. We can use the increment command. The incr command, the increment command, will increment a variable by the value 1. So this will perform exactly the same function as the two previous pieces of code. From an efficiency perspective, this is the fastest way to increment a variable by 1. So if we run the code now, we'll see it's now gone up to 8. If your application is concerned with performance and you need to add 1 to a particular variable many times, then certainly using the increment approach is the fastest way of doing it. Now that we've looked at the addition operator, we're now going to look at the subtraction operator. We're going to create 3 local variables, one for the customers in the bank at any point in time, and then another for the number of customers entering the bank, and another for the number of customers leaving the bank. We're going to set those values up, and then we're going to subtract them. So the number of customers currently in the bank is 20, and at any point in time there were 5 customers leaving and 1 customer entering. So we can print out the number of customers in the bank just the same as we did before, by printing out to our console a string saying customers in bank, followed by an equals sign, and then a semicolon to say our number is going to appear directly after that, and then the variable containing that number. So this will give us the number of customers currently in the bank. We can now recalculate the number of customers in the bank by doing the addition to add on the customers entering and a subtraction to take off the number of customers leaving. Again, I have used the underline character to fold the code down to the following line so that you can see all the code at the one time. So we're taking the value that's in the customers in bank we are making it equal to what is currently in that variable plus the number of customers entering minus the number of customers that are leaving. And we can then print out to our console the number of customers left in the bank. So as we started with 20 customers, we should now have 16, which we do. As we did before, there are two other ways of actually doing this calculation. We can use the variable with a minus sign, an equal sign, and the number we wish to actually remove from it. So we're taking the number of customers in the bank and we're subtracting from that variable the value 2. We can then print that out to our console. So this should reduce it down to 14 customers, which it does. We can also use another command. We used the increment command before to increase the value in a variable by 1. There is an equivalent decrement command which reduces the value in a variable by 1. So if we just simply use this command twice, it will do exactly the same thing. It will take 2 off the value in the customers in bank, taking this down to a value of 12 customers. So in summary, today we have used the addition and subtraction arithmetic operators. We've also looked at some reformatting of these variables to line them up properly on the screen. We've also touched on different variable types. As well as the long variable type we looked at in the last video, we've also touched on the currency variable, which is really useful when you need to do financial calculations. Hopefully you'll find this guide useful when you're developing your applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.